Welcome back to Do More with Your Money. On today's episode, I am joined by Yohance Harrison. Yohance is the founder of MoneyScript Wealth Management and is also a chartered retirement planning counselor and a behavioral financial advisor. He's also the host of the MoneyScript podcast, where he shares insights and new perspectives on financial principles to help listeners grow their financial literacy. And financial literacy is something that I definitely share a passion in, so I'm really excited to have a conversation with you today.
TJ as well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And I was just telling you before we started listening is I've heard you speak in the past and on various podcasts, and I really have a lot of respect for you and what you've built in your business. So I appreciate you coming on today. And yeah, I always want to start with I've heard the story, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about your kind of why and how you got to where you are today.
I appreciate it, TJ. So my why is really embedded in my experience as a youth. When I was a young teenager, my mother was in a serious car accident, and shortly after that, we think due to some of the head trauma she received, she developed seizures. Those seizures eventually rendered her with a full disability. And so here we were, a rising middle class family in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then in the matter of, a year or two, we were in poverty, pretty extreme poverty, if you ask me. The house was foreclosed on, food stamps, my dad trying to work multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. And so that experience, was a driving force for me to want to make money, and to just learn more about how money works. So I started a job at Bank of America when I was during the summer in between my freshman and sophomore year. And it was there that I learned about financial advising. I learned about brokering mutual funds. This is 1999. So the stock market was going gangbusters, and I was responsible for referring business to the financial advisor. And just one day I just asked the question. I was like, wait, I got a t-shirt for referring $1 million to him. What did he get? And my manager said, I thought you never asked. Introduces me to the financial advisor. And I said, I'm on the wrong side of the bank. And he said, you are. And that's when I learned about what a financial advisor is, how they work and what they do. And I was just fascinated by that. Eventually that led to me starting my career at American Express Financial Advisors, which became Ameriprise. And after leadership and stuff for a few years, I decided, I want to go back to just running my own practice. And so here I am today as a financial advisor at MoneyScript Wealth Management.
That's an amazing story, and I love that to hear how you've persevered to like gain that education. Now you're helping other people, either increase their financial literacy, even if you never work with them or one on one. I think that's a great thing. And I also worked for Ameriprise. That was kind of where I came up. I want to talk about and start with financial literacy and talk to me about what does that actually mean? Why is it so important? And what are some ways that people can start to increase their financial literacy?
So financial literacy is important because it is a driving force in everything that we do to survive. And not only in America, but all across the world. I mean, yes, there's still some few, individuals or tribes that are living that are not disconnected to the world. Actually, Google that. There was an article about a tribe, I think in South America, that recently got access to the internet. You'd be surprised to what they decided to research on the internet. Actually, you won't be surprised. But once we decided that it was no longer valuable to trade, my corn for your bacon, and we had these tools that we use to represent something of value. Our economies changed and how we interact as a society changed, and it only becomes more and more complicated over time. I mean, if you go back 50 years, there was no such thing as a solo 401k. There was no such thing as a Bitcoin. There was no such thing as a Roth IRA. I mean, I think that might be 30 years old at this point or something like that. So it continues to become more and more complicated. And if we don't understand just some of the basics of balancing our checkbook, I shouldn't say checkbook, our checking account. So balancing our account, most of us youngins listening to this don't know what a checkbook is, but balancing an account, understanding how your credit works and why it's important to keep a good credit score, understanding how interest works. So the difference in an APR and an APY, having that basic education can can prevent you from some of the pitfalls of life. Had my parents understood the importance of disability insurance, maybe my mom would have had some. Now, I'm not saying it would have changed, our entire outcome of what happened, but I can tell you that they would have cashed those checks. If my parents understood life insurance, I wouldn't have paid for their burials. Truly, they didn't understand it. I talked to my father about life insurance when I first got my insurance license, and he said, "Why am I going to give somebody money so you can get rich when I die?" I was like, "Dad, I don't. It's not about getting rich. It's about and he was older, stubborn generation, and but that was his lack of financial literacy. The same thing with his 401k. Like, Dad, why didn't you put money in your 401k? He's like, why am I giving my money away to those people so they can do whatever they want with it? It was like, but that was embedded in his grandparents and his parents past of what happened when, unfortunately, Black people opened their first bank accounts after in Reconstruction. A lot of that money disappeared, so that was kind of instilled in him, and he didn't pick up any financial literacy of his own over the years. So it's important so that you can relieve yourself of some of the stresses around money. Because if you're more educated, it's one of those, the saying is, now that I know better, I do better. So I feel that if people know better about their finances, they can do better with their finances. That's the quote.
That's incredibly well said, and yeah, it makes me sad to see how many people don't take full advantage of their money because they either have, again, embedded thoughts around how money is managed, or they just don't know, and they're not transferring catastrophic risk, right? Like you mentioned, disability, or like what is the actual purpose of life insurance, right? Do I need a permanent policy, or do I need term insurance? So there's all these things, and it's so important to educate yourself because you can save yourself so much time and money in the long run. And so you said it incredibly well. And you also hit on something which I think we're going to transition to next, which is the name of your podcast, which is Money Scripts. And can you explain what are money scripts and why did you choose to name that your podcast that?
So, money scripts are these ideas and beliefs that we have developed around our relationship with money. So, how we interact with money. Now, how I came up with the name is a little bit different than Dr. Kuntz, he's a psychologist who has written an entire book on money scripts. And I am in no way attempting to infringe upon his trademark and his registration there, because he's a psychologist. I mean, he did a full study on it. It just so happens we came up with the names of the idea. I won't say we came up with them, but we decided to adopt those names right around the same time. Okay, in the mid 2000s. Where it came from for me is actually hip hop music. There's a song by one of my favorite artists, Jay-Z, and it's called "Stick to the Script." And that was just one of my favorite songs. I enjoy that song. I because this is probably not rated PG-13, I won't sing the entire lyric, but he says "stick to the script" after saying some other things, and he talks about money in the song as well. And I was working, or still work, with a lot of physicians, and I was joking with a physician one day, and she said, I'm here to get my money prescription. And she said, "That's what you are. You're like a doctor for money." She's like, you should, call yourself Dr. Money." I was like, I don't think I can do that. I said, "But that's cute." And we started joking around with the idea of, here's your money script. And that's where it began for me. And so when I started, I always wanted to have my own firm. And I had decided, when I start my firm, I'm going to call it the Money Script, or Money Script, well, and turn it to Money Script Wealth Management. So, but money scripts for me, again, is this the ideas, the beliefs that are usually impressed upon us at a very young age that develop our relationship with money. And some of them are very common. You've probably heard of the phrase, money doesn't grow on trees. And when I hear that, I've heard that phrase before. My father said it to me in the past. But as I got older and got a little bit more financial literacy of my own, I started to think, well, if I was an apple farmer, my money does grow on trees. Okay. So, why is that phrase, "oh, the money does grow"? Is that because you can't plant the money and then it grows? Okay, fine. But for some people, money does grow on trees. Actually, if you look back at the history of money, there was a culture that used to use the this is also in South America. South America has a lot of great fancy stories when it comes to money history. But they used to use the cocoa bean as a form of money. So if you were so lucky to have land to have a cocoa bean tree in your backyard, your money did literally grow on trees. Okay. So, but we have that we allow ourselves to hold on to this concept of money doesn't grow on trees, or money is the root of all evil. No, money isn't evil. It's a tool. That's like saying, oh, that shovel is evil. Oh, no, no, the shovel is a tool. Now, if I take the shovel and I whack you over the head with it, I become the evil person swinging the shovel, but the shovel itself is not evil. So to try to say that this tool is the root of evil, I think that diminishes our relationship that we have with money. But a lot of people have these scripts in their mind, and they're replaying these scripts in their head like a movie. When they're faced with a tough decision, the mind works in a very, very rapid way to get you to an answer, because it wants to keep you safe, and it wants you to be happy with the decisions that you make. And so it will justify very quickly and play this movie in your mind of why you need to make the decision you do. Like, oh, the stock market's falling. Oh, I need to go sell everything in my IRA. Oh, well, why do you think that? You're 35 years old. I mean, where did that come from? That is a money script that you have subscribed to. And basically, my role is to help people rewrite your script.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And perspective is everything with a lot of a lot of things in life, but especially with money and having this idea of, is there an abundance out there, or am I having more of a scarcity type mindset where I need to, hold on to every single dollar, right? Same with that money script you just mentioned. Are there any other like common money scripts that contribute to certain behaviors that you witness in your day to day as a financial planner?
You mentioned scarcity, and I find that that is one that does tend to hold on to people very tightly, especially as those of us that are in a job where we have a W-2 wage, because sometimes we feel that we are the money we make when we're not. Where someone feels that, oh, I'm not worth more than $60,000 a year or $70,000 a year. And I've dealt with this with clients where they are negotiating for their next role or a new role, and they'll call me up and they'll say, hey, I have an offer for $100,000 and 10,000 of stock. And I'm like, that's it? Like, no, I mean, that's probably as much as they're going to pay. I was like, you don't know that. Oh, well, what should I do? I was like, ask for 150 and 30,000 of stock. And actually, quick story, I had a client where we were having this conversation, and she came from one job that's paying her less. She went to this company pre-IPO, and they were going to offer her more, and they were going to offer her some stock. She's like, I should just take it, right? I was like, no. I was like, that stock, that's not even real money to them. I was like, ask for like 4 times more. Are you sure? You're like, yeah, go for it. Why not? And she asked, and they said, well, I can't make that decision. I need to go take it up the flagpole. I was like, let them run it up the flagpole. And she's like, well, what if they say no? I was like, you already have the offer. If they say no, it's no, but at least you ask. They came back and said yes. And this was pre-IPO. So now that company's publicly traded, and starting next month, she's going to get, I think it's like $20,000 a month for like the next year instead of 5. Okay. All because I said, no, ask for more. So, removing that I am not worth it attitude. So that's probably one of the greatest pitfalls that I find, or money scripts that I find with individuals I work with. That they think that they're worth what their last job paid them. And I try to get them to understand that they're worth whatever they're willing to stand for or demand, and so much more than that. Because again, it's just a dollar amount of value that's been assigned to the exchange of the service or the work that you're going to provide. So that's a big one. Another big one is that to think that you can't start saving, you can't do something small to start. And we have inside my practice and my employees, there's a running joke, and the client that's the butt of this joke, he knows it. So I'm going to tell it just in case he picks up this podcast as well. He called me up and he said, hey, things have been rough. My spouse, had to change jobs. You're not making as much money. I think his grandmother just passed away. It was just a lot was going on. And he said, but I feel like I need to be doing something. He said, can I just put $5 a week? And he gets paid weekly. He's like, can I just put $5 a week into my IRA? I was like, yeah, really? I can do that. There's no minimum. So you can do $1 if you want to. I said, whatever you want to do, something's better than nothing. And my assistant, this is where the joke comes in. She sees the note of $5 a week. And she laughed. She was like, really? You want me to set up $5 a week? I mean, why even do it? It's $5 a week. And I came down on it pretty hard. I said, no, we all start somewhere. I said, and little by little, a little can become a lot. I said, yeah, it's $5 a week now, but in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, maybe it's 10, then 20 and 30. And she, okay. And she set it up. But then fast forward a few months later, her and I, because I invite all of my employees, they get free financial planning from me. They can sign up to do their own financial plan. And we sat down and we're talking. And I said, all right, let's start your Roth IRA. She's like, yeah, I don't know if I can really start doing that. I get the kids and this and that and that. I said, you can start with $5 a paycheck. She was like, you're right. I can start with $5. And she did. And now that $5, I don't know, she might be doing 50 or 100. She's doing something. But the idea of thinking that I can't do anything, when in actuality you can do something, even if it's small, because little by little, a little becomes a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's just so crucial, just to touch on a couple of things you said, that you are going out there and you are looking for other employment opportunities if you feel like you're not receiving your value, that you are asking, to get your full value in that situation where you're getting equity compensation. And, it doesn't hurt to ask. I think people, just the fear of asking a lot of times, what they say, closed mouths don't get fed,
True.
stop so many people from really just getting their true market value. And all these money scripts contribute to that, because at the end of the day, how you view the world is often how you're gonna, take action in the world. Yeah. So with the money scripts, how do you think about money scripts versus concepts of behavioral finance, as far as like maybe some other things with like feeling overconfident with financial decisions, and how does that intertwine?
With behavioral finance, so that is built upon the foundation of helping my clients, or helping just the world, because this is also what I talk about on my podcast, but helping individuals bring alignment between their values, their goals, and their financial behaviors. Often, many of us have goals. Some of us have done the work to understand what our values are, and even if you haven't sat down to establish your values, someone observes you for long enough, they're able to kind of figure out what some of your values are. And then finally, we have the financial behaviors. So what you do, and oftentimes, individuals and those behaviors, you can kind of think of those as the money scripts as well, the things that you do because you did it before. But a lot of times, I'll meet people, and they can eloquently state what their values are. They can tell me what their goals are, but then we go look at their financial behaviors, and there's no alignment there. I'll to throw myself on the sword first. I told my son, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. College is important. However, due to some of the changes that happened with the relationship between me and his mother, I wasn't being as aggressive about putting money into his college fund. And when he was in 10th grade, he dropped out of school. Okay. So at that point, I was like, so much for this college fund thing, and that wasn't the best decision at the time. But he got his act together. He went back to school, graduated early, and got accepted into a private university, and looked at me and said, all right, Dad, I did it. I'm going to college. I need $34,000 for the next 4 years. I was like, oh, yeah, about that. I got the first year, but I need to introduce you to my friend Sally. He was like, who's Sally? I was like, you can get to our house through FAFSA. Fill this out. He was like, wait, we have to borrow? What do you mean? And it was a frustrating, a very tense exchange for us, because he's looking at me like, wait, you're the financial advisor. You've been doing this my whole life, and you don't have enough money to pay for my college? And I was like, son, I don't. My values and my values and goals were not in alignment with my behaviors. So now for my daughter, totally fix that. That be whether if she decides not to go to school, the money will be there because I got those behaviors into alignment. So that is where I feel the behavioral financial advice comes into play, is getting to understand the behaviors people have. And it's like, do you do things because you did them, or are you doing these things with an intention? Are you doing these things because of the psychological biases that are in place? For instance, my favorite bias, I talk about it all the time, especially with the stock market we have, is anchoring. I still have people. There are people in this world. You may be listening to this podcast. I'm going to call you out right now. Nvidia is no longer $1,000 stock. It's not. Okay. And no, there are people that say, wow, I've received messages from individuals or emails like, hey, my friend said I should get Nvidia. It was $1,000, but now it's down to 100. And like, yeah, that's because it did a 10-for-1 split. You're not going to, no, it's not 90% off. That's not what happened here. But people have anchored to that $1,000 as if that is the price the stock is. The same things happen in the real estate market. I have clients that feel like they shouldn't have to pay, I'm gonna make up a number here, $500,000 for a house. I was like, no, you want a house. You've been saving for a house. Yeah, but it's 500,000. I was, when we had this conversation 5 years ago, it was 350. It was like, okay, well, that was the price then. And they're anchoring to that price and now calling the 500,000 expensive. Well, who knows? 3 years from now, the price could be 800,000 or it could be back to 350. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that anchoring bias can sometimes keep people from making important decisions.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And that's why it's great to have a financial partner in there with you who can maybe spot some of these blind spots for you, because we all have them, whether you're a financial professional or not.
Oh, I have them. Oh, believe me. Yeah, I mean, I have a stock portfolio just like everybody else. Oh, and which one is it? The confirmation bias. Oh, I would look for all the reasons to why I haven't sold XYZ stock. And I will seek out the reasons that support my belief. I can't help it. I want to be right. That's the human nature in me. And I want to feel safe. And I don't want to feel like I made a poor decision. Okay. So every now and then when I go through my stock portfolio, I'll go look for the opposite news. So just the other day, Intel. Okay. Are we allowed to talk about stocks in your podcast? Can I?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so Intel, yeah, this isn't a solicitation to buy any stocks there. I did the disclosure for you. I have Intel in my portfolio. Okay. And I bought Intel, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. If you go look at a stock chart on Intel, it just looks like the craziest roller coaster you've ever been on. Okay. And I'm talking just going down for a long time. It's like, oh, this is a long ride. Can I get off? And recently they just cut their dividend. And that's one of the reasons why I owned Intel. I was like, oh, this is a chip company that actually pays a dividend. Well, now it doesn't pay a dividend anymore. And so I had to force myself to go out and look for the opposite of the reasons that I want. So I said, tell me why, because what I want to do is sell Intel. I was like, I need to sell this. It's not paying the dividend anymore. And so, but instead, I went to say, I Googled the case to buy Intel. I said, let me find some other people that are saying Intel is a buy right now. By the way, it was hard to find, but it gave me a reason to pause and say, let me not make a knee jerk reaction. I didn't buy Intel for the price it would be in 3 or 5 years. I bought it for the value it would bring over 20 years. Okay. So do I need to sit tight, not capitulate, or is it an opportunity to buy more? But I had to force myself to do that, or else everything that's in my feed is Intel is done. NVIDIA's taking them over, get on and on and on. Again, just confirmation, that confirmation bias being reaffirmed over and over and over again.
Yeah, this investing is so much psychology, and I think you highlight some great points about how much noise there is out there, and if you don't go out of your way to kind of challenge your own beliefs, that you can get in this process of maybe being a little overconfident with your decisions, like or anchoring to certain things, or having confirmation for the information you do find. How do you help individuals kind of cut out some of that noise, because there's so much, whether it's like CNBC or Kramer or some any kind of entertainment versus actual personalized financial advice.
Whew, you said Kramer, man. So by the way, I watch CNBC, but when Kramer turns on, I just like, okay, got to go watch something else. I can't handle that guy. I can't, um, for reasons I won't get into on this show. That's for another show. Um, the primary way that I help clients clear the noise is to go back to asking them about their values and about their goals. So anytime a client's bringing me the noise, the question I like to ask is, okay, great. How does this decision you want to make align with your goals? Sometimes I have to say, well, what is the goal? Especially when I get the question about should I should put some Nvidia. My friend said I should put Nvidia. Again, it's not saying everybody needs to buy Nvidia, but I should put Nvidia inside my 401k, inside my IRA, what have you. I'm like, okay, well, what's your goal for your 401k? Oh, well, retirement. Okay, when? And sometimes I get the, don't you know this information? I was like, no, I do. I'm going to make sure we're on the same page. Oh, well, at 60. Okay. All right. And you're 40 today. So it's 20 years from now. So tell me how this one stock NVIDIA is going to make an impact on this 20-year goal. The fact that you want to buy 10 shares of it. Oh, it was just somebody else just said I should have it. Okay. Well, I mean, but should you? I mean, so it's getting back to, okay, what are the goals and what are your values? And does this behavior support your goals and values, or are you just doing it because other people are doing it? And I also what I really like to do is I'd like to tell clients about all the stocks I missed out on, because the list is long. Okay. And I shared this in another podcast that actually just came out this week. So you may find these similarly, but I sold Netflix in like 2014. So I missed the best run that Netflix has. I did. Now, don't get me wrong. I had a good run from 2007, I think it was, or 2006, 2014. It was a great run, but I sold it. Okay. Why? Because I had other goals. My goal wasn't to just own Netflix. The goal was to use that money to do something else. And I did. But if I, in hindsight, if I had held on to the Netflix, I'd have, 20 times, whatever the number is, I'd have a lot more money in that Netflix stock, but I sold it. Why? Because of the goal that I had. It was time for that goal to be achieved. And that's where the money was. I was like, nope, I got to liquidate this because I don't, I'm going to need the money to do something else. So I think helping people to be very selfish and think about that phrase, what's in it for me and why am I doing this? Because if I'm just doing it because Kramer said so, or CNBC said so, or the cover, I was like, if you do everything that they say,
The historical track history is not great for that.
it's not actually, for those people that like to, there is the Kramer opposite portfolio. It's out there. Okay. It outperforms him. Okay. It does. It outperforms him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard for people to always, distinguish between entertainment and, again, personalized advice and focusing on your goals. I was recently helping a friend's parent. She had received an inheritance and she was concerned about election, right? Concerned about, is this a good time to invest, kind of thing. And I was just pushing back and saying, well, what's your household investment strategy? What does that currently look like? And she didn't really have one in place. And so, if you don't have a goal for your overall investment strategy, then you're making decisions based on short-term thinking, which isn't necessarily going to align with your long-term goals. And so, getting comfortable with the fear of missing out, getting comfortable with, focusing on your personal growth path and what that looks like, and not worrying about maybe how your neighbor's portfolio is performing, or your friend or your coworkers. I mean, this is so valuable, but also so hard to do unless you're making a conscious decision and having somebody in your corner like yourself to help think through these things.
Yeah. And really quick, just to go back to the whole NVIDIA thing. NVIDIA, by the way, at the time of this recording is down about 35%. Do you know how many emails I've got to buy NVIDIA? None. But when it was up 150%, oh, I should have some NVIDIA. I'm like, no, you should have had it 6 months ago. You kind of missed that. And that's the biggest thing that I want to get people to understand when it comes to listening to the news of what's going on with this stock, whatever. Yeah, they're making headlines because of what they already did, not because of what they're going to do. Whatever they say they're going to do, it's all speculation. None of us know. And if you need a reminder that none of us know, just take yourself back to where you were late February of 2020. Okay. I remember where I was. I was in Las Vegas at this, my friends and I, we every other year we would go to Las Vegas to watch the Super Bowl and hang out and have some fun, little guys trip. So in February of 2020, we are in the MGM Las Vegas. And at the same time, it was the Chinese New Year. And the hotel lobby, as we were walking through it to head to a pool party, whatever it is we were going to do, the hotel lobby is filled with Chinese vacationers that were in the US. But the problem was a lot of them were at the lobby and trying to talk to travel agents and all that other good stuff because the Wuhan airport had been closed. This was happening simultaneously during Super Bowl weekend. And I remember us kind of just joking about it, like, oh man, Guess they're going to be stuck in America for a while. Wuhan's closed, and not even connecting the dots of the COVID. And it's like, oh yeah, it's some flu. And we were totally diminishing the whole thing. There were 6 of us. When we got back to our respective homes, 3 of us had the worst colds, air quotes, we had ever had. Okay. So, meaning some of us were patient zeros in our respective cities. I wasn't one of them, but some of us were. But that's how we perceived it mid-February of 2020. We don't know. We just don't know. We speculate, we use as much data as we can to try to make a prediction, but at the end of the day, none of us know. That's why we create a plan and we hope for the best and we plan for the just in case than the worst.
Yeah, well said. I'm a big fan of like rules based, whether it's investing or financial planning, because yeah, we don't know what the future holds. We can make our best approximation, and hopefully over long time frames, we're putting the odds of success in our favor because we're making consistently good decisions. But if all of a sudden we're changing on a whim, or we're chasing performance, or we're making wholesale shifts because of maybe feelings or emotions, that can typically lead to bad outcomes. And one of the things that I wanted to get your perspective on, kind of going back to some of the money scripts, is on the other end of things, maybe you have been doing all these good, things from an investing planning standpoint. How does one know when they have enough to, whether that's, have some level of independence or financial flexibility?
This is a great conversation, and I was recently listening to Carl Richards and Michael Kitces have a similar conversation on their podcast of how do you know how much is enough. And it is something that I will admit to you, TJ, that I am having these conversations with myself in my journaling that I do, and with my wife and with my children. We had to have this conversation with our daughter. She's loved. She's 7 years old. She has a nanny that, or her grandmother, she calls nanny, that is pretty financially independent because she lives with us, and so she doesn't have a lot of bills. So just about anything she asks for arrives. She has, I don't know, my wife has 5 adult siblings, and I have 7. Okay. So she has a lot of aunts and uncles. So I bring this up because my wife was helping her clean her room and she was going through all of her Barbie dolls. And she said to her, and I was just kind of ear hustling the conversation. She said, we have to start to ask, when is it enough? I mean, you have so many, we can't fit them in all their little compartments. You even have 2 of some of the same. At some point, we have to decide what enough is. And so my daughter, being 7, and she's like, well, I'm going to count how many I have. I was like, okay, well, let's, and my wife is, maybe you have 50, maybe 50 is enough. And of course, my daughter was like, but there's still some that I want, maybe, well, okay, well, maybe it's 60. Or maybe we get rid of some of the ones you have and make space for the new ones. So I bring that up because it's challenging even for a 7-year-old to know what enough is. So it can be equally as challenging for an adult to be able to determine what their enough is. And I'll admit to you, TJ, I'm still working through that myself. Again, that's why I was listening to that podcast. But I have started to ask the question, when it comes to the size of my practice, how many clients is enough? When it comes to what my income goals are, I did come to a realization a couple of years ago, as I was building a business and striving and to hit these certain targets and numbers. And I kind of came to the conclusion that it's like, if I have a business that's generating low 7 figures, and I can pay all my employees, I can pay myself, I can maximum fund my retirement account and keep my debt at 0 and have a few vacations a year, I was like, that's probably enough. Because before I had that conversation with myself, I'm thinking, oh, I can build a $10 billion RIA. And I was like, for what? What is that going to gain for me more than what I have right now? I was like, I have a beautiful home. We live in a great neighborhood. I mean, my wife still wants a pool. That's part of her enough. We don't have that yet. We're saving for it, and we don't yet have enough. But when I started to just kind of determine, okay, if I was just doing the thought exercise of, if I had, $5 million of income, what would I do with it? And it started to turn into, well, I kind of have enough. Could I do more good with it? Could I, donate to more causes, or, excuse me, things of that nature? Sure, I could. But do I want to work that hard to generate that? And I've started to, like I said, to accept this notion of enough. So I've introduced the conversation to my clients as well. And the way I introduce it is talking about financial independence. And the way I view financial independence, like a lot of other financial advisors, is financial independence is a point in time where you have enough capital and resources and sources of passive income that working becomes more optional. Doesn't mean that you necessarily stop working, doesn't mean that you retire, but you go to work with a totally different attitude, knowing that you have enough, that you don't have to be there. So in having this conversation of financial independence, I start to insert the concept of, okay, what is enough? At what point would you have enough capital, enough money that you can do the things you want to do? You're not sacrificing your values, your goals are being reached. Because when we get there, we have to, it begs the question, why are we still working as hard as we were last week if we have enough? And I'm happy to report I have a few clients that are starting to reach that point of enough. I had one just recently, a couple of years ago, or I guess a year and a half ago, that we sat down to review the financial plan, and she was 56. We thought she was going to work to 60, but stars aligned a little bit, and I did the numbers, and I said, you know what? You don't have to earn $250,000 a year anymore. You can get by with just 80. She said, say less. That's all she needed to hear. Like, all right. Shut down her practice, went and took another job. She was like, I'm good, because she's hit that she has enough. Now, it's not enough that she doesn't have to work completely, but it was enough so that she only has to work 20% of the time as she used to.
Yeah, I think quantifying that, through financial planning goes a long way, and really showing people, maybe you haven't achieved true financial independence, but you have enough assets to, cover maybe this level of income. So if you can supplement it doing something that gives you more time freedom or enjoyment in your day, like this is a way to kind of expedite, this process there. And I'm also a big fan of, like, I've worked primarily with millennials, is just, looking at your lifetime and really taking a long-term view and not being afraid to take breaks and use your resources, use money from maybe your taxable investment account, and know, as long as you feel comfortable that you have the skills to kind of go back and gain employment again, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking breaks along the way. And even for myself, I also kind of struggle with this concept of enough. I'm nowhere near financial independence, but if I look back 5 years ago to where I am today, my former self would have been like happy with where I'm at today as far as like an income standpoint, time freedom, all those things. But yet I continue to move that goalpost. And so I try to just take that step back. I've also been doing some journaling as well. I'm just trying to think like, hey, I actually do have enough for right now. Maybe I do want more. I think it's okay to want more, but also be content that like I have enough in the current moment to do everything I want to do.
Exactly. I agree with you. Yeah. I did that current moment. Do you have enough now? Right now? And that's something that we often have to just remind ourselves that, right now you're good. Now, it doesn't mean that you're still going to be good in a month, 2 months, but right now you are. And if you are good now, that is a great place to start. And if you can keep adding up, again, that little by little, little becomes a lot. If you can keep adding these moments where you say, you know what, I have enough, I am enough. And let's go back to this whole psychology of it. You have to first believe that you are enough as a whole being yourself, that you are enough, because all this other stuff are just these physical items that live outside of us. But we have to first be content with who we are as individuals and know that we are enough, and all of these other things are just extensions of us, and they can be created or they can be destroyed in a matter of minutes. But we have to know that we are enough just within ourselves. Not to get all squishy on you,
No,
but
I agree with you. I know I hear you on that. I mean, it's like if you were to take everything away from you, your self-worth is not your net worth, right? So if you're tying all of your worth to this monetary thing, we just talked about, money is just a tool, right? So, I like to think if you took away, again, not a crazy net worth or anything, but if you took away all my money, I'd still have intrinsic value just for who I am. And also I can rebuild that stuff.
Yeah,
And
so
yeah,
let's pause on that for a second, because this has been a huge conversation. I'm sure you're going to drop this at some point in the near future, and it will probably be within the next 90 something days, which is an election that's coming up. And I'm having conversations with clients, because I have clients on both sides of the aisle. I like to call myself the great moderator. I have clients on both sides of the aisle. And that conversation is coming up, this, the Democrats, and this, the Republicans. And, well, what about my taxes? And I had a client ask me the other day, said, well, how do you feel about your taxes going up? I assume you're in a pretty high tax bracket. And I said, I'll just make some more money. I'm not going to allow, the change. I was like, in the change in the tax bracket, I was like, I'm not a multi millionaire. I know you like to think I am, but I'm not. I was like, these things, yeah, maybe I pay an extra 4 or 5% in taxes, but guess what? My child goes to a public school. I drive on public roads. When I call 911, I want someone to answer the phone on the other end. So I have this belief that, yeah, my taxes, though, yes, is there waste in the system? Of course. I waste money too. I'm human, and humans are running that system as well. But I believe that the taxes serve a purpose. And I have to remind clients, I came from poverty. My parents were, if it weren't for food stamps and Social Security and disability, we would have had absolutely nothing. I mean, we fortunately were able to stay in the house that they purchased that was foreclosed on, because a friend bought it out of foreclosure and was leasing it back to them. So we got to stay in the same house, but we were still struggling to live week to week, month to month. So I have a different relationship with the government and their support. And if I got to pay an extra 5% because of how the vote went, no matter how I vote, but if I'm paying extra 5%, if I allow that to destroy the integrity of my long-term financial plan, I didn't have a plan. Okay. Because that's something that's out of my control. That's like me complaining because, I can't go to the football game because it's raining. No, put on a raincoat. If you really want to go to the football game, go sit in the rain and watch a football game. I'm a big football fan. Football starts today, by the way. By the time this airs, it's already well into football season.
absolutely. No, I think those are great points. I mean, I'm a big fan of focusing on what's in your control, and with financial planning, right? That's why we're talking about having a plan and having a rules based strategy, because yeah, if you're making decisions on things out of your control, that's going to be a recipe for disaster.
Absolute disaster.
So I always like to end off with just basically one tip you would like to leave the audience with to do more with their money. It can be on the spending side of the equation, saving side of the equation, investing side of the equation, anything.
I do have a tip, and I've been running with this for a couple of years now, so I'm trying to make it a thing. A lot of times people find themselves in debt. And I have discovered in the 20 plus years I've been doing this that there are only 3 reasons why you're in debt. Reason number 1 is because you had an emergency. Okay. Car breaks down, tooth starts to hurt, or like me, I had nodules on my thyroid. Emergency, thyroid has come out of my body. If I don't have the money to pay for my emergency, or I'll say it this way, if there's not a smart place to get the money, there's a not so smart or dumb place to get the money. Okay. A dumb place to get the money is paying 28, 29% on a credit card. A dumb place to get the money is sometimes borrowing from a family member. That can sometimes damage a relationship because you didn't have it yourself. So you go into debt because you had an emergency and you didn't have money. The second reason you go into debt is because there was something that was important to you. You didn't create a plan for it, and it became urgent, and you weren't willing to say no. I already gave you that example. That was my son going to school. It was important. All of a sudden it became urgent, and I wasn't willing to tell him no. So what happened? We went into debt. We said, Sally, let's get some money. Okay. This can be something as simple as a car repair. Cars eventually break. It's important to set aside money for car repairs. You got to change your brakes. You got to, there's things, get oil changes. If you don't set the money aside for it, all of a sudden that decision becomes urgent. And if you're not willing to say no, you may have to borrow to make that happen, or it becomes an emergency. Oh, I got to fix this now. Okay. So things that are important that become urgent, you're not willing to say no. And the third reason we go into debt is because we, in our best minds, we make the decision to spend tomorrow's money today. That's the YOLO lifestyle. Oh, I only live once. No, you live every day you wake up. You only die once. Okay. And if you have that concept of I'll take care of it later, I'll pay it off with my tax return, or I'll pay it off when I get the bonus, or, I'll pay it off when I get the new job. That will be a way that you create some debt. And if you are listening to this right now and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I have some debt, your debt came from one of those three places, but not all three. If you don't create a plan to combat each of those three areas, you will find yourself in a continuous cycle of debt. So have an emergency fund, work with a financial planner or a partner or someone to create a plan for the things that may happen so that you have a smart place to get money, and just start living within a budget, within your means or below your means. Live below the income that comes in. And that may take some sacrifices. You may have to do some things a little bit differently. But if you can do that, you can get yourself out of the cycle of debt. And I'm very passionate about this, if you can't tell, because I've been in the cycle of debt before. And I find that the majority of Americans are as well. I know it wasn't a quick tip, but that's my tip.
No, that's an amazing tip, and I think it's as a financial planner, you think that living below your means is kind of like a default mental model, but you start to learn that a lot of people do not live below their means, and it's a hard, obviously, depending on where your income is and things like that. But yeah, learning how to live below your means is essential, and then understanding the reasons why you would want to take out debt or be forced to take out debt, and then creating some kind of margin of safety. So I love that tip.
Yeah, the below your means, it can be difficult sometimes. And a budget can feel very restrictive. But I promise you, once you're in a budget and you're living below your means, below what comes in, it becomes very liberating. Very liberating.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's like a, with discipline, you get freedom. So even though it feels limiting to have a budget, it actually ends up leading to more freedom in the long run.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Well, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. Where is the best place that people can connect with you?
So by all means, check out the Money Script podcast. We are in season 4. Got some great interviews. Actually, I'm going on a string of financial advisor interviews. So I think my next 5 interviews are all going to be other financial advisors. It's a fun thing I stole from Zach Galifianakis, Between Two Ferns. Instead, it's Between Two Advisors. So we do a little water cooler talk. And a lot of my clients have said those are their favorite episodes because they get to hear us talk about them. So check out the Money Script podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and then of course just look up the Money Script, and you either get Dr. Kuntz or you get me. So find me anywhere your Instagram, your socials, moneyscriptwealth.com, all that fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to all that in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for coming on. This was a great conversation.
TJ, this was great. Shout out to you and your show, and I look forward to doing more with my money.
Let's go.